Another day of tears for Oscar as Stip was giving his testimony.
Well, we know that today was the anniversary of Oscar's mother's death, and of course she's a major figure in his life. He has a tattoo of that date on his arm. So it was always going to be a very emotional day for him. We know that he hasn't responded well previously when that ballistic report was read out and the details of the order in which the state will argue Reeva Steenkamp was shot came out. He reacted very badly. And today, when those details about how Dr. Stip observed Reeva Steenkamp's body, her pupils dilated, her iris is going milky white, as he said, it really documenting the evidence that he said that this was a person who was fatally wounded, probably in the last stages of her life, dying in front of everyone. Even mentioning in quite disturbing detail the fact that obviously because of her head wound there was brain matter in her hair. Oscar Pistorius retching forward, literally dry heaving in the dock. And after court, just in the last few moments, sitting with his sister Ame, being comforted. So a massively emotional day.
Let's talk a bit about what Stip actually had to say, particularly after arriving on scene, what he found Oscar doing, being at Reeva's side, and the fact that he was praying to God to help and bring her to life.
Well, I think the defense will emphasize that, because what Stip was saying, and he actually said it in cross-examination, was that he really honestly believed that Oscar Pistorius was sincere and he did want Reeva Steenkamp to live. He wasn't painting a picture of a cold-blooded, premeditated murder that the state is going to argue Oscar Pistorius in fact is. Whether or not, the state will continue with its argument that Oscar Pistorius feels his only remorse because he is now in trouble and not genuine remorse for his deeds remains to be seen. But I think it was a very sympathetic piece of evidence for Oscar Pistorius. He said that the athlete was by Reeva's side. He was trying to put his hand on the wound on her groin where she'd been shot. He was trying to get her mouth open because she was clenching so that they could perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on her. It was obviously very, very difficult. We don't know at this point of that stage if she was even breathing. The doctor saying that she had no pulse, and then describing in quite a great deal of detail how Oscar Pistorius, as he put it, had a whole conversation with God, begging God that telling God that he would give his life, dedicate his life to him, dedicate Reeva's life to him if he allowed Reeva to live.
And quite a bit of argument now emerging between the defense and the state. And I think also giving some kind of indication towards how different their line of argument is going to be in terms of what happened on that night. Let's speak particularly about the issue of gunshots. They're two separate forms of noises that Stip says he hears. The defense argues one thing, the state argues that set of noise was another. Tell us about that.
Well, Stip was a valuable evidence for the defense in the sense that he has, to some degree, provided evidence that they can use to corroborate Pistorius' version, which is essentially that he shot Reeva Steenkamp. He responded in horror. The screams that were heard were not that of Reeva Steenkamp, but of a highly anxious and emotional Oscar Pistorius screaming. He then the second set of bashing noises or gunshot noises that Stip says he heard and that the other witnesses have identified as gunshots, he says were in fact the noises of his swinging this cricket bat at the wooden door to break it and get to Reeva. Now, for the first time today, we have a sort of degree of concession from the state that there were two distinct sets of noises. But the state is reiterating that it believes that final set of noises were in fact the gunshots. They're not committing themselves to any particular version as to what the first set of noises were. But they say that the shots that were fired at 3:17, those noises that Pistorius says were the sounds of the bat, were in fact the shots that killed Reeva Steenkamp.
And certainly, Karyn, a lot more details coming out from today to unpack for later on this evening. Oscar looking much more composed as he left the courthouse this afternoon than he was inside, breaking down and being held by his sister. That's where we leave it for now. Bhavna, back to you in studio.
Know more about your world.
eNCA.com